Welcome to the press conference for City to City. Just a few points before we begin. No flash photography in the press conference, and as the talent enters the room, photos can be taken from your seats. But the 6 accredited photo agencies can take photos throughout the press conference. And TIFF will make the press conference available on the media site within 24 hours. We do have a volunteer with a microphone who'll be moving around the room to handle your questions. So feel free to ask questions, and when you do, please identify yourself and your media outlet. Everyone, please make sure your cell phones are off, and remember this press conference is streamed live at tiff.net. Our moderator for this session is Mohit Rajans, film critic for Omni and City TV, and it's my pleasure to welcome the participants of City to City. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the City to City press conference. My name is Mohit Rajans. As we thank you for joining us today for the festival City to City program. As I'm sure you know, this year the program focuses on Mumbai. There's been an exciting revolution recently that's seen local independent films emerge to contrast the Bollywood's commercial cinema. Mumbai is a massive player in the global film world. Past editions of City to City explored how filmmakers represented their urban landscape, but this year the program showcases filmmakers living and working in Mumbai regardless of where their films are set. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the filmmakers here with us today. How's everybody feeling, first of all? Is everybody okay? Everybody happy? Yeah? Look, do you guys realize the royalty that we're sitting amongst right now? There's some great filmmakers here with some great projects at the Toronto Film Festival. We're going to start with the other Mohit, the real Mohit, as we say. Mohit Tekalkar is here with the film The Bright Day. And then we move to Mr. Habib Faisal, who's here with the film Born to Hate, Destined to Love, which is, of course, known as Ishaqzadeh. And then we move to Mr. Vasan Bala, sorry. Who's here, sorry. I was given a different order. I'm going to come back to Mr. Vasan Bala in a second. Mr. Abhay Deol, of course, actor turned producer, also here with the film Shanghai. Mr. Dibakar Banerjee, director of the film Shanghai. Mr. Vasan Bala is here with the film Peddlers. Mr. Anurag Kashyap is here with 2 films, shall we say, Gangs of Wasseypur Part 1 and Gangs of Wasseypur Part 2. Mr. Hansal Mehta is here with a wonderful film called Shahid. There's lots of filmmakers here. Mr. Ashim Alawalia is here with his second film at the Toronto Film Festival called Miss Lovely. Anand Gandhi comes with his very first feature film, Ship of Thesis. And Mr. Manjeet Singh comes with the film Mumbai's King. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Toronto. I hope you guys are enjoying yourself and enjoying the festival. If people have questions, we will start to take them after the first question, which will be myself. The landscape is obviously changing. All of these films are completely different from each other. So I ask you, on an international scale, what is it like to have the Toronto Film Festival represent or present your film? Give us your feelings being at the festival and what the response has been like if it's screened, or what it's like to have your film at a festival like this. Shall we start with Mr. Kashyap?
I think we should start with the first-time filmmakers.
We can start with Mr. Anand Gandhi then.
Well, the response has been really, of course, very encouraging, and the audiences here are cinephiles. They're really excited about their cinema. They're really serious about their cinema, it seems. And so my film is about 2 hours, 20 minutes, a minute more or less. It keeps changing in length, and even so, it started at 9:30. My premiere started at 9:30 in the night. It was a sold out show. It was a house full, and the film ended about 12, and so post midnight, pretty much the whole audience stayed back for a Q&A. So that says something about the audiences here. They're really interested. They're really curious. They're excited and they're really enthusiastic about. And that's a great response. I mean, we were talking about how amazing it would be if the audiences around the world, would just respond to our films in the way audiences here respond.
Excellent. Any returning filmmakers? Mr. Ashim Ahluwalia, you had the film John and Jane here, which was a documentary. This is a completely different format for you with the film that you're presenting this year at the festival. Your film hasn't screened yet, right? But what is your feeling coming back to the film festival?
I'm sort of my first film. I had a very similar kind of response that Anand had to the festival. It was really encouraging, very open. It's a very warm festival from the point of view of a filmmaker. The audiences are really open, and yeah, I think it's actually a really amazing place to have a first film. It's probably the best festival that you could have a first film in, I think.
Are there questions immediately? We'll continue to move on. Habib, can you speak a little bit about your film in particular and how you went about it from a visual treatment standpoint, and what your initial thoughts were about casting the film, about who you wanted for the film?
I wouldn't want to talk about the visual treatment as yet. I don't want to, spoil it, because the first screening is going to happen today, and I'm quite nervous about it, because this is the first time I've made only 2 films, and this is the first time I'm at a festival. I very proudly say that I'm a mainstream Hindi filmmaker, and I love the mainstream grammar. I love the intermission. I love to write for the intermission. What that does to writing is that you need to have 2 acts, and then each act has 3 acts. So there is, those of you who are familiar with screenplay writing, you need to bring the whole drama to a point of intermission, hook the audience so that they go out, buy their popcorn, and come back still excited about what is going to unfold in the second half. So that's a very unique thing about mainstream Hindi filmmaking, and the songs. I love that. And but within that, I try to make films where I'm not insulting the intelligence of the audience. And somewhere, if some interesting thought has come out in the film and you go home thinking about it. About the casting that you were asking about, again, I would be spoiling the film because casting decisions had to do with the story.
Okay.
And I'm really excited about seeing what the response is, because when you write or you make a film, you're not thinking, I'm doing it for a festival or I'm doing it for a regular audience. You're just making a film. You are excited about telling the story.
Right.
And when I'm doing that, I am looking forward to having people from Bhopal to Boston watch it. And this has come close to Boston. Bhopalis have watched it a lot. The film has done very well in India. So at least I don't come with that pressure that some of the filmmakers come, where it has to be shown to agents and distributors, and will they like it, will they not like it, will the reviewers kill it in the process of buying. So I'm looking forward to how does this audience react to the film.
Excellent. Dibakar, your film has released in India already. Is this a different game to play when you're coming to promote it in an international festival? Do you find yourself meeting about your next projects, etc., or are you still promoting Shanghai? And what has the response been so far?
Well, actually, I'm not someone who strategizes very well or very focusedly around my film and what to do after that. What I do is, I'm kind of known as the uncertainty principle back in India. My first film was a typical, cult commercial hit, But after that, you know, I've been making films which have been kind of defying expectations and, you know, really not doing something that is expected of me has become the expected. So when we made a film like Shanghai, it was a first in many ways. I mean, that was the first time that a government body in India collaborated with a true blue Bollywood studio to make a film. That was the first. Then we had someone like Abhay Deol and someone like Imran Hashmi, who, you know, those who watch Indian films know how it's like, you know, taking two different ends of the Indian film spectrum and combining them together. It wasn't planned, it was just excitement, it was just creative, you know, this thing. And then we released it in India, and we released it in some parts of the diaspora community all over the world, the way a typical Indian film is released, a mainstream film is released. And then, even after that, when the city-to-city section happened, you know, we were called for Toronto, and it was not planned. And when we got called for Toronto, that's when we decided that we would be here, and we would want the film, first of all, to be seen by people who are not acquainted with Indian cinema as against Bollywood cinema, as against cinema that comes from Mumbai, that comes from the same studio floors and studios that make Bollywood films. But the same directors and the same producers and the same financiers also make a lot of films that could stand up for something like Indian cinema. So my main plan is for the film to be seen by cinephile audiences in every festival. And actually what happened in this festival was, right from the first press and industry screening, we got lots of invites for other festivals. So my main plan, and that's no plan, that's an urge that kind of becomes a plan, is to have our film seen by as many cinephile audiences all over the world and get a glimpse into what India is through a window that is a little different from Bollywood. If that happens, that would be my Christmas.
Sushya, you have a question?
My question is to Anurag, also because you have a production house. We have some fine filmmakers here, and 9 of them are here, of course, and they're all male. Have you seen any budding female filmmakers at all?
Yeah, there are lots of them. There are lots of young, new female filmmakers who are working in Bombay. Other than the established one, the one new exciting filmmaker who's coming out, her name is Aarti Kadav. You know, who's like doing and putting together an incredible project. So there definitely are, things are changing. Wait for.
Sorry. Anusha Rizvi, who made Pimply Live, is another filmmaker to watch out. Actually, Zoya Akhtar.
Zoya, that's why I was not talking about
Yeah.
extremely established people. Zoya with one film is very established. Gitanjali Rao, yeah. She's making her first full-length animation feature, which we are producing.
Which begs the question, why aren't any of them here?
Answer why only men are sitting on this. So the question has to go to
Go to
Cameron.
TIFF, yeah.
Hi, gentlemen. Vinny from Foamy Cafe. This is, I guess, open to anyone that wants to take this one. What are your thoughts on critics and critical reviews or acclaim or lack thereof, and how that actually affects the chances of a film, especially because you guys are making films that are not maybe essentially mainstream? So what do you think about critics and how that affects what audiences come and see your films?
You want to know my true feelings?
Yes.
Careful, careful. They're in the room.
No, see, for filmmakers like us, critics and the reviews are very important. Like the mainstream Bollywood blockbusters, they are critic-proof. You know, they don't need reviews. Good or bad review, they will do what they have to do. But for filmmakers like us, reviews have been very important. Critics have been very important, and somewhere they have played a larger role in where we are today. The quality of criticism in India is terrible.
The quality of criticism, what does that mean? They just
No, in the sense, no, because I don't think so. We have very many. There are. I'm not talking about the exception. There are film critics like Bharadwaj Rangan and all that who I immensely respect, and I love to read them. But India has a set template of writing reviews. They write down the whole story of the film, and then they talk about whose performance was good, whose performance was bad.
Right.
Then they talk about how the sets were, and they talk about this person was not used very well, that one was used very It's a very
20
strange.
minutes shorter.
Yeah, and
The film could have been.
and that's called editing.
Yeah.
The length of the film is editing.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem with criticism back home. So
I think I'll try and earn some brownie points here. I don't agree.
Same. Yeah. I would
No,
say that
I think they're as good or bad as we make films. I mean, the critics are as good or bad as us, probably. I don't think, like if we say we look down upon them or they haven't evolved enough to criticize or critique our films, then I'm not really sure how evolved we are to probably face the best in the world. So I think it balances out in a way.
I would have to disagree with that. I would have to disagree. I think Indian critics are particularly bad,
I think
and
there are-
and I
mean-
think it has to do. I think it has to do also with the fact that every film is seen on the same platform. So essentially, someone who's reviewing Batman or who loves Harry Potter is also talking about an independent film when he's never seen, or he or she's never seen an independent film. So and everything is talked about in terms of stars and in terms of box office. It's almost never talked about in terms of cinema, in terms of
Yeah, I think
filmmaking.
there are scattered bits who are like
No,
who are
on-
there
on-
who,
I think
who are
only-
actually looking into
only
films with a
the
particular
Indian film
perspective.
critics who you see the film critics that audiences read in India are particularly bad. But the film critics, if you see, the ones who actually you will end up seeing them at the festival. People who write, who are not read very often, are actually good reviewers.
Exactly. So
And the funny thing is that if you pick up the papers, every film has a 3-star review.
Right. A 3-star.
So,
Right.
like, every film manages to get some critics who give them 3 stars. So, that's the funny part.
I'm perhaps the only one in this room who has made the maximum number of films. And I've had 8 films, and my worst films have had 4 stars. And my better work has had 1.5, 2 stars. And I mean, I was really affected when I first faced Khalid Mohammad's review. And he was a cult figure. I mean, I was devastated. Somebody called me and said, Khalid didn't like the film. And I cried the whole night. And I don't cry anymore.
Yeah, the problem with India is also because very box office driven. Most of the critics are actually trade people who are only talking about. They review a film based on how much business they anticipate it is going to do. It is not about the film per se, and which is what the problem. That they are the critics writing for the mainstream newspapers,
And they are also starstruck.
and they're very
They're very
starstruck
starstruck.
because
And
most
that
of the
is-
critics are also the gossip writers.
Yeah, there's
that's
a
a
very
big problem.
tabloid approach to reviewing, and if any one reviewer, I went through that. One particular reviewer called my film regressive. So the very next day, all the newspapers turned that into a headline, and the same film was celebrated by very strong feminists. There are 3 of them. They came out with a book called Maiden, Mothers and Mistress, where Shabana Azmi and Pariniti Chopra, who has played this character in Ishaqzadeh, both of them were called as actors who have played very strong characters. So, but essentially what happens is any one reviewer writes a negative, and then that phrase or that negative becomes the main quality of the film. And so it's a very tabloid kind of approach to reviewing.
Okay, but let's flip that around. There's independent filmmakers here, first-time filmmakers, and they need the exposure as well so that their projects are seen and heard. So doesn't...
And I wish the reviewers would then give that kind of support. Actually, it's all very mercurial. You can't even, you can't make a trend out of it also. Which is what I was saying, it's a very tabloid kind of approach. There almost seems to be individual point that has to be made. So every reviewer is, it's more about their own position and the byline that is going with the review, and not so much about the film.
Yeah.
And it is not an educated reviewing process. If you make a point, and if the argument stems from the text that the film itself is. There was a film that came out recently called Shri Farhad, which is being directed by Bela Bhansali. Every review started with Sanjay Leela Bhansali's sister Bela Bhansali. I mean, what kind of reviewing is that? Why do you need to talk about that which is outside of the text of the film that you are being given? And so you have to judge the film in the context of Sanjay Leela Bhansali's sister making the film.
Can I just weigh in on Vasan's behalf for 1 minute?
Yes.
Gneet, your question was, it was asked, were you meaning Indian film criticism or international film criticism, or both? Indian film criticism. Okay, what I would like to say, I mean, I agree with Vasan, but I would like to kind of qualify that by saying that just as filmmaking in India is changing over the last 10 years, film criticism is also changing. I have seen a varied lot. There are many criticisms or critics who behave like, what my friends are saying, but there are many critics who actually see a film for its worth, who find unseen gems, who go and look at screenings and talk about the film, and they're actually film enthusiasts. And their main passion is to see the unfound gems and present them to the audience. So I would say, and I've read international film criticism also, I would say that it's a spectrum. What happens in India is that there is a tradition of Bollywood filmmaking which generates a tradition of criticism, selling, distribution, marketing, and everything. Similarly, a new generation of filmmakers have bred a new generation of critics. And I would say that a range exists. To condemn it by saying that it's all tabloid would be slightly off the mark.
And also to add to that, I was going for the Masters screening. So there were 3 reviewers who were international reviewers who had started reviewing Masters even before they had seen it. And everyone I was just speaking into it, and everyone was writing the long single shots that Paul Thomas Anderson does. So Masters is going to have that. So they have written all the common points. It's a great film already. And then they're watching the film with a notepad. So yeah, I think the gene runs throughout.
The person that's been the most quiet about this topic is Mr. Abhay Deol, and I find it interesting. You're changing gears now. You're going into producing from the acting realm of things. Will all of this become something more that you'll have to focus on, or is right now is the important thing right now to learn from some of these people about how to take the next phase in your career?
I think the important thing is to, the reason why I got into production was mainly came from a point to protect my films, and by that what I mean is I felt that you'd make a movie and it may not conform to what I call formula, which is Bollywood, and it'd be really hard to get the right type of marketing and distribution for those films. So that's what I essentially got into production for. The rest of it, as far as the critical reviews are concerned, yeah, I mean, sometimes it helps. For films like this, it definitely helps, because most likely you're not having a star-driven vehicle or not having something that's of the formula kind of niche film. It needs some kind of word of mouth to support it. So yeah, I'll take from everybody's example. I mean, I'll just pursue what I really believe in, that's all.
Mohit, I read that you actually edited your own film. Is this a common trend that's starting to happen now, or is it just a necessity in order to keep the creative process going with yourself?
No, I started as an editor, so I have edited around 15 films earlier. So it was but obvious that I would edit my own film. And it's like a feeling that you just entrust your own baby to someone else, and that becomes very difficult. And that's the worst thing, that you do the backseat driving, and when you sit behind and ask the editor to change things as you want, then it's better that you yourself edit your films.
Excellent. There's a question from the front row.
Hi all, I'm Mary Ellen Ward, and I write an independent India travel and culture blog, and we've met before, I have so my audience is partly in India, but it's partly, throughout the Western world, English-speaking Western world. And of course, Bollywood is such a big cultural export. And so my question is kind of twofold. One, and it's open to anybody who wants to answer, how much do you feel like you're fighting against the Bollywood behemoth? And also, how much do you care about Western audiences? Or are your audiences going to be more in India, or are you reaching out to the West?
Okay, so who wants to take the first part of it, which is the Bollywood behemoth question, I think? Who wants to take the first part?
We have done fighting that, in the sense. there was a time we were fighting the Bollywood biggies and everybody, but I think right now I'm in a process where I'm fighting the fans. Because who start to define what you should be doing and expectations, and that's a much larger fight than fighting Bollywood. That you start creating this whole thing around yourself, because now I think we are in a position where we are making films and all kind of films are coexisting. So it's a change scenario. The big problem is the distribution right now, which one needs to address for mostly the independent movies.
Actually, I want to piggyback off that because, Manjeet, your film comes to the festival without distribution, right? And there's a few films, as well as yours, Mohit. What is that process like? Is it, are you attending your screenings and hoping that buyers will take it from here internationally? You mentioned, or your question was about whether the audiences are in India.
We hope so, but ever since I came here, I've been hearing about this fact that this whole lot is against Bollywood. I don't know about others, but seriously, I don't feel that it's like a war kind of situation where we 10 are against Bollywood. We cannot rule out Bollywood from India. It's in the genes of people. People who have grown up seeing Bollywood. We have grown up seeing Bollywood, being a part of that. The thing is that we have an independent voice which we want people to hear, and that's the only difference. Some of us are there who want to do lesser compromises, but that's the only difference. And regarding audience, what I feel is that obviously we want people to watch our films in India. No film is made, I guess, only for film festivals. So we are looking forward to that. But one thing is for sure, that we cannot forget the fact that if we make a film, we'll suddenly get audience. Like, it is going to be a tough game, and each film has its own audience, and we'll have to wait for that audience or wait for them to mature and respond to the film. We can't just make a film and expect that it should be a super hit in India. We'll have to wait for that.
Manjeet, what are your feelings about that? Sorry.
In India, we don't have an alternate art distribution setup, which we have in US or in Europe.
Right.
So that is the major problem. So we have to share the distribution space with, the big films, and the ticket price also happens to be same, whereas the budgets, there is no comparison. So those are the issues we are facing. And right now, there is one company called PVR which is releasing independent films, but the films are getting released technically, but they're not reaching out because no money is put into publicity. So at least they have taken the initiative of releasing the film. That is good for filmmakers, that they get a technical release,
right,
and some reviewers get to watch the film, and some niche audiences get to watch the film. But the film doesn't travel beyond certain point. So I guess that is the next stage.
I just want to add something here. There's a note of optimism here. There are 10 films here, and there are more than 10 films in India which should have been here, which were perhaps better than some of our films, which could have been here. So there's a huge amount of optimism right now. When I started making films, it was impossible. It was impossible. I had to add songs. I had to have a very, very an actor who looked awkward dancing, doing 6 songs. I had to have him do 6 songs. I had to have him looking like a buffoon in the songs. And, those compulsions are no longer there. We have made our films with a completely independent spirit. And, it's time to celebrate that spirit. And, they'll find an audience eventually. We've gone this far. In the time to come, we'll find the audience. The audience needs to reciprocate now. The onus is on them, not on us.
Abe, you had a comment? I just want to make sure you get your comment in before we go.
Well, it's not a question of fighting the behemoth of Bollywood. I think the problem is that, and I think that's what the point is being driven home continuously by everyone, is that there's no support system for something outside of the Bollywood film. So it's great. We've stuck to the formula for decades, which is great. But now that audiences have been exposed to a lot more 24-hour television, and Indians have, now making more money, the middle class has gone up because the economy opened up. People want change. The industry doesn't like change because I guess when you're comfortable doing a certain type of movie and it's giving you money, why would you want to change? But I think now the time has come to get some kind of support system, whether it be tax incentives, government support, different pricing for tickets. It will help support this alternative industry. The filmmakers are not fighting that.
I'll just take a cue from what Abhay said. The large problem in India is the way the government, the way cinema is perceived by the government or within the context of their thing. Because the definition of cinema in India, in the constitution, is cinema is healthy entertainment.
Cinema is, sorry?
Healthy entertainment. So that's how cinema is defined in the Indian constitution. So a big problem is there. And the government looks at cinema as, they don't take cinema seriously. Cinema is a medium to ride on in terms of get promotions, get this, that. Stars have this whole thing about, they have to endorse every product and they used to sell.
50% tax also.
So, and then cinema is heavily taxed and there are no government concessions. Government does not use cinema, like world over cinema is part of a culture where it's very backed by institutions, government. In
That's
India,
very true here in Canada.
Yeah. In India, cinema is not taken seriously by the government. So cinema is the last thing that they discuss. And barring an NFDC, which also was lying redundant for a long time, till one person, I completely give credit for that to one person who changed it around, which was Neena Gupta. But before that, that was also redundant, and if she wouldn't have done that, I think NFDC would have been the same how it was 6-7 years ago. So I don't think the attitude of the government in India has not changed towards cinema, because of which we don't have those exhibition spaces and we have to fight. We have lesser number of screens as compared to the rest of the world. We are 10 times or maybe 100 times the population of this continent. But I don't know how the equation, 10 times or 20 times, but our number of screens are like 10% of the number of screens that are on this continent. So when the films go out, is one big film is coming out, it occupies all screens. So all the other films have to go out. Right. And the government policies do not support the kind of a thing where people can invest in cinema and get something out of it. And cinema can become a kind of a cultural reflection of what India is and the independent voices. So the big problem is the government's attitude towards cinema in India.
But the point to be noted is that within the same environment, almost all the people that you're seeing on this table have actually worked and changed the system and are actually contributing to making a new breed of audience and a new breed of film critics and distribution chain and everything come alive in India. So I would say that while we could complain a bit, but I would like to turn the thing around and say that the onus lies with the filmmakers, and they have changed it around. And the fact is that unless and until a film, whether Bollywood or non-Bollywood, works for the audience in India, which is changing as well, it won't travel forward from there. So it has to work both ways.
I'll just add one thing to this, because it's my first feature film, and I've been working on this film for the last 3.5 years. So I've been a little cut off from watching any mainstream films in India as well. But and I've kind of been in my ivory tower of sort for a while. So I've had a lot of time to think about what I'm doing and what some of my friends are doing with films back home. I think a lot of us are making films which we don't necessarily can or want to identify as just as Indian films. Of course, they are Indian films. Of course, we are, we come from a geographical context. We come from Bombay, most of us, and we are making films that have actors who are also largely Indian. But at the same time, I would think they are their films. When I see a Hungarian film, I do not think of it as when I see a Palfi film or a Bela Tar film, or when I see when I see an Iranian film, and when I see a Kiarostami film. Yes, there is that context of it being an Iranian film or a Romanian film or a Hungarian film, but at the same time, it's also a film that transcends that kind of a boundary, and that is also a hope here. That we have arrived at a point in our global culture where these boundaries of East and West are more blurred now than ever before.
Right. Mohit, I just want to go back to the point about the fight. In that dialogue, we've always been just talking about the makers. In that dialogue, it is very important to also involve the producer.
Right.
And And I, for one, am very, very optimistic because, at least for me personally, it has happened that producers are now, they have the balls, they have the guts and the courage to stand by. Some guy goes to a producer and says, hey, I want to make a film about a middle-class family's journey from a scooter to car. How will they buy their first car? And somebody's willing to put money into that, make a film with two mainstream actors coming back together after 30 years. That's me, made a film called Do Duni Char. And then Disney picks it up, and and then this film that I made, apparently it is a very un-Yash Raj-like film. But then, so Yash Raj now has the balls to, I mean, this is not the first one. Before that, they did another film called Band Baja Barat, which was also sort of...
against the grain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this dialogue of fight, what is happening is that the producers are also realizing the kind of stuff that was, say, triggered by Divakar's Khosla Ka Ghosla, where producers then figured, okay, there is a maths to it. You put in X amount of money and you make Y amount of money, and everybody's happy. And in that process, you have tried to be inventive and told a new story. And these smaller films then completely shook up what was happening. I mean, 5 years ago, if you did not have a visa stamp on your passport and gone out and shot a film, nobody would come to watch it. It had to be at least Maldives, if not Switzerland. And now everybody's looking inwards. Now if a Zoya makes a film which is set outside of India, then it's an exception, right? So I think in all of this, some amount of the spirit and the gumption of the producers also has to be celebrated. I mean, any producer who is also a filmmaker, there is Moneybags, which is doing their job, but then there are producers who are filmmakers, equally passionate about making the films as us directors, and that's changing.
I want to just ask, I want to get Ashim here into this conversation too, because your subject matter in particular must have been a very hard film to pitch. And so the funding for somebody like your film, would that come from a big budget studio that has the balls, so to speak, or what you were referring to? Or was it something that you had to independently try to go after money-wise?
No, actually, the kind of stuff that I make is just way too weird to even engage with an Indian studio. I mean, I tried with Miss Lovely a little bit, and they took bits and pieces, and Balaji ended up making a dirty picture with it. But it's okay because it's a different film, and I don't, you know, it's fine. There's no such thing as plagiarism in the world. Nothing's original. So, but the point is that, I mean, I tried. I did my like Bollywood number for like 20 minutes, and I tried, and the kind of expectations. But I have to say that was also like a couple of years ago, before a lot of the stuff that's happening now has happened. And I think now it would be slightly different. When I started out, when I was trying to make this film, I mean, the kind of expectations, the kind of stars that were being suggested to play the characters, and if you see my film, I mean, you know, I'm not going to name them, but it's incredible. The kinds of people that were suggested, you know, you put this guy in and talk to him. If he's interested, we'll get you money, etc. So it was all based around stars and about, you know, if this guy's interested or she's interested to do that, then you get this much money, you know. And we tried. I mean, I can say this, I guess. I mean, I sent a synopsis to Mugdha Godse, who was like a kind of a, you know, upcoming starlet at the time. And her response was, if you send me a film like this, I'm going to file a criminal complaint with the police. So, I mean, then I just stopped, you know.
So the answer was no then?
No.
Right? Yeah.
So I ended up having to go to the Japanese and to the French and to the Germans and to whoever would give me money and cobble together money to make the film.
We have a question in the front. It's on.
Hi, I'm actually going to go on with something that you said, Mr. Mehta, about the fact that you had to put a song once upon a time to make a movie work. I know music now is very different when it comes to movies. Mohit, I know you have something very interesting going on with the Kabir project and the music that you have in your movies. So how is music today, and how has that changed?
I'll just answer this question because, you know, music was a market-driven thing. To be able to make my film, I sold music for nearly the budget of the film. I used to sell music then. Now music doesn't really sell. It's a whole. You need music, but you don't need it as much as you did then. I mean, we would underwrite our entire budget with music without stars. I mean, with stars, everything sells. Everything sells. Without stars, we would still sell our music, we would still sell our video, we would still sell our satellite rights. And so there's no compulsion. I mean, music is important. I love music. And Gangs of Wasipur is a musical, and it's a part of our culture. I'm not deriding music when I say that I had to do that, but I did it in a film which did not need it.
Mohit, do you want to answer? She asked the question.
No, I
originally.
think Hansel said what I wanted to. That's fine.
Excellent. The films continue to screen all week long here at the Toronto International Film Festival. The City to City program is a fantastic thing happening here at the Toronto International Film Festival this year. On behalf of the festival, I'd like to thank all of you guys for spending your week here with us and celebrating Indian cinema in all of its forms. And best of luck, and we can't wait to welcome you back to the festival with your future projects. And thank you to the media for coming as well today.
Thank you, City to City. Thank you, Tiff.